Let's talk about testing. Testing is a way to ensure that your code runs properly or as expected. We have several ways of testing our code. We have the unit testing, which is the testing of single unit of code. We have integration testing, which is to test how different units of code work together. And we have end-to-end testing, that is the testing of the whole application. But in today's video, our emphasis will be on testing single unit of code. For instance, testing a function, how a functions return XYZ, and so on. We are going to be using Node.js, TypeScript, and Jest for our testing. So I'll initialize my Node app. Let's install the packages that we'll be needing for this project. Of course, I want to make it a TypeScript project. I will install as a dev dependency TypeScript. Then also npm install -D. Let's bring in Jest and the type definition of Jest. Let's install the type definition for Node, types, Node, and for Express, and also Jest. So I'll click enter, and if we go into our package.json file, we should have TypeScript Express, the Jest, Node, Jest, Jest. If you are doing the common JS or vanilla JS, you don't have to install the TypeScript Jest here. So so let's have our ts config. I will create my ts config.json file. Then I'll have the settings there. We have our compiler options. Then we have this configuration there. Up there should be in this folder. Source map. Why I'm setting up my project now is because we will be using it for our integration test when we build our REST API later. So the target will be, target should be EX6. Then we have module, should be common JS. ES module interrupt, let's make it true. Let's first file name, first consistent case in the file name true, no implicit any as true, strict mode true, skip leave check as true, and we want to include the following. So if you have your typings here or source folder, this is where you can write the include, but for now I will skip it for now and I will proceed. Let's create app.js, let's call it API folder. Then inside we can create our app.ts. Let's check if this guy is working. We do console.log. Then we have hello world. So we have our hello world. I'll open my terminal. Then we need nodemon. Let's install nodemon. npm as a dev dependency do nodemon. Then we can have our dev script here as nodemon API / app.ts. Then we have this drilling comma here. Then if I do npm run dev, we should have nodemon started and the hello world printed out to the console. Cool. Now since we have a running application, let's create our test. We're writing everything here in this API folder for now. So you want to append the word test.ts, or you want to append the word spec. So for specific testing, you want to use the word test, or you want to put test here. Just for consistency's sake, I'll use test. The testing framework that we'll be using is called Jest, which we have installed earlier. And if you go to the browser and you type Jest, you'll be greeted with this. Jest is a JavaScript testing framework. If we click on it, then we go to the docs, you'll see how we can run a simple test using some keywords provided to us by Jest. We have the likes of describe, it, test, expect, and whatnot. So I will head over to my VS Code, and inside my app.test.ts, let's write our first test. I'll close my terminal. And there are certain rules that we need to put to heart while writing our test. They are called the arrange, act, and assert. So arrange, act, and assert, the triple A's, if you like to call them. So arrange means we want to set up the test. It's a way of preparing for the test where we write describe and whatnot. And for the act is the actual execution of the function. Let's say we have a function that is being declared and we want to invoke it later. And the last one is assert. We want to check the output of that function. So let's use the word describe first, because I'll be writing nested test. Describe is a way of grouping tests together, the keyword describe, and this word is globally available the moment you install Jest. So I'll continue with my app.test describe. Let's do sum two numbers. So sum two numbers. If you hover on this describe, you have the name of this test group, the name, then it has this function as a callback. Then I can have my callback like this. Callback, what you want to be fired. Then we have test. Our first test, let me name it test one. So test we can give it a name, should return the addition of two integers. Then we can have our callback again. So we are having our arrangement here. We are arranging, then let's call this test one the arrangement. Arrange. So it's a way of preparing that, okay, we want to write a test. Let's write a function that we would need for this act. So we've written our arrange, that is we are preparing, or we are prepared. Then let's write a function for the act. I'll call it function sum numbers. So we have two parameters called A, which is a number, and B, which is also a number, and the return type should be number 2. Okay, we need a colon here. Yeah, we want to return A plus B, a simple function. So for the act, let's call this sum numbers. I'll declare a variable called const. Let's call it result equals to some number. Then we can pass in our argument as 2 and 4, because it's expecting 2 arguments because we declared 2 parameters here. So this can be referred to as the act because we want to execute this function, right? And for the expect, we can say expect. Then we open our bracket that our result to be let's say 2 plus 4 to be 6. So we are saying we are expecting the result coming from this act to be equal to 6, which is correct. If you add the value of 2 and 4 together, you have 6. Then how can we run this? I'll stop my app for now. Then I'll do npx jest. Then if I say npx jest, we got this error because we've not configured our jest config. So I'll create a new file called jest .config.js. It can also be in JSON, I think. I'll write module.export because we are in JS. Then we say verbose to true. And if you're using JSON, you just convert this guy to double quotes and all. Verbose to true. Preset is ts.jest. Test environment set to node. Then we can ignore module paths, ignore patterns. This one will be useful when we are testing for our REST API. Then we can ignore for the root directory. We can have roots there, then dist. Root there, then dist folder. That is, we want to ignore patterns coming from after building. If you have your TSC in your configuration, if you have a build like this, build TSC, it will run through our TS config and look at this out there. It will create this folder, but we want to ignore it. Right, testing. So let's run this command again, nps jest, and we should have what? 1 passed. If you go to this matchers section, we have different matchers that you can use. We have the to equal. We've used the to be. We have to equal, and a number of them we have for the truthiness. We have to be defined, to be null, to be false. We'll use a number of them in our testing. So I'll go back to my app.test. So let's write another test. I'll write expect the result function. Then we say not this another matcher to be, that is, we want to negate this guy, not to be 4. This will also give us a passing test. If I run my npm run JS again, you should have a passing test. But if I put 6 here, this should be a failing test, because some 2 numbers should return addition of 2 integers. So it's expected not 6, but we are given it 6. So this is a failing test. So as we can have a passing test, we can also have a failing test. So let's look at another matcher. I'll comment this guy out and I'll duplicate it. I can do we can expect the result to be greater than, greater than 6. Then I'll change this guy to 7. Let's comment this guy out and let's run. This will give us a passing test. Let's look at how we can run our test with a script instead of killing the terminal and running it again. So we can run it with a script here. I'll put my test, then npx jest. Then we can pass this flag called watch all. If I'm correct, watch all. It's just like your node one for jest. So if I run npm run test or npm test, whichever one you want to run, it will look for every file that has the word test in it. So let's run npm test. So we are in the watch mode. Then if you go back to our app.test ts, if I change this guy to 8, to pick it up, then restart it. On line 12, we have expect result to be greater than 6, which is correct because 8 and 7 should give us 15. Makes sense. So we also have another one called not to equal to. So we expect our result not to equal, not then to equal to 6. This will give us a passing test. But if I put 15 here, because our test is 15, you should have a failing text. The sum 2 numbers should return the addition of 2 integers, expected not 15, but we're passing in 15 there. So that is some of the matches that we can use. Let's look at a truthy matcher too. Then I can have 2 tests within a group. Like I explained earlier that we can, this is a grouping. We are grouping a test. So let's say this is test 1. We can have another test 2 here. Test 2, confirming truth values. Then it should return a callback function. Then our flat arrowhead. Then we can say expect 3 is less than 3. So when we write expect 3 is less than 3, which is what's false, because 3 cannot be less than 3, then you can say to be what? To be falsy. Because 3 is not less than 3, then if you open this guy, we should have a falsy value. So let's make this guy pass first. Not to equal to, let's put it in there. Makes sense. So we should have 2 passing tests here, because 3 is less than 3. But if I put 3 is less than or equal to 3, less than or equal to 3, we should have a failing test here, because this guy will return a truthy value. But if I say to be truthy, we should have a passing test. Makes sense. You can also extract this guy. You can extract this condition into its own function if you don't want to add code it here. I'm just showing you how you can run tests in between the expect function. Let's look at how we can test asynchronous functions. So our titled it as asynchronous async functions. Then let's write a test for it. We want to group this guy into his own test. We will call it fetching data. Then if you over on it, it's saying that it requires a function. This is the name for this grouping. Then we can write our callback function. And by the way, you can use the word it or test. You can use it. Then you have something like it here. Let me demo that for you. Let's then we run npm test again. We still have the same 2 passing test, but for the sake of consistency, let's stick with 1. I'll default this guy back to test. It's still working. So let's activate our fetching data. Now do test. It should return a JSON objects. Then we have our callback again, because in the test we over on it is saying the name and a function, right? Function is this guy, this line here. This is a function, a callback function, if you want to call it. So it should return an object or a JSON object. Then we can have this because we want to run on async function. So there are 2 ways, normal ways to use. So there are ways you can use the .then.catch, or you can use the async await, which I prefer using. So I will use async await. I turn this guy to an asynchronous or a non-blocking function. My flat arrowhead, then I'll declare this. So we can write our first test. So we can say const data equals to await fetch data function. So let's declare our data here, our fetch data function here, asynchronous function. We call it function fetch data. Then we have returns a promise of what? Of string. Returns a promise of string. Then we can either return it directly or just let's declare another response equals to await. Then we use fetch provided to us by Node.js. Fetch API. So click on fetch API. Is coming from where is it coming from? So it's available globally. So fetch API. Then we can pass in our URL. So we do HTTPS. So let's do JSON placeholder dot typicode. I'm trying to get typicode.com, then to do's, then 1. So this is what we are calling And at the end, we want to return response.json. So response.json. Then we can call our fetch API here. So this is our arrange, and this is our act. So this guy is calling the fetch data here, function here. Then we can write our assertion here, or what we expect to get from here. So in our assert, we can do expect that the data, which is a result of this response.json, to be equal. So to be equal, I don't know what the response will look like. Let's to be equal to I'm just put the JSON here. ID1. So equal, yes, ID1. So by the way, let's log these guys. We can also log here to log data. Let's see what we will get. Then if I do npm test, so that we can get the actual data. So this is what is coming back. Completed is false, title is this, blah, blah, blah. So we have an object. So I'll copy this user ID. So we're expecting user ID. Let me stop it so I can get it from here. User ID is 1. Title is this. Copy this guy. Title is that. Then completed is false. Completed is false. So 1, 2, 3, 4. ID is 1. Okay, sorry, it's called ID is 1. Title is this guy. Completed is false, and user ID is 1. So let's paste this guy there. Then let's fire again. A testing. So this should be a passing test. So we are saying we are expecting data to be equal to the ID of 1, title of this guy, completed false, on user ID. So this is how we can run our asynchronous testing or operation. Lastly, let's look at how we can set up and tear down. If we go to the docs, we have set up and tear down. While writing tests, we have some works or functions that we need to happen before we run our test. So just like our pre and post functions, that after our test, we want to fire something, or before our test, we want to fire something. So we have some setup work that needs to happen before the test, and you have some finishing work that needs to happen after the test run. So we can use some keywords like before each, after each, and so on. So let's try one that is before this test. Let us console or log something. Let me stop this for now. So before all, you can have it as a function too. So before, let us log so I'll copy and paste this a number of times. So before and after all, copy this after all. If I'm correct, after all, this has been camel casing. Okay, after all, let's change it to a fire emoji. I'll duplicate this guy a number of times too. A typical use case for the before and after all is that if you want to test your database before, or you want to delete every record that you have there, then after all, maybe you want to close the connection or no. So that is a typical use case, but in this tutorial, we'll not be doing that. So if I run my test again, npm run test or npm test. So before all, we have that log fire, and after calling this is my fetch API. It's coming from this fetch data here. Then we have our console. So this is a starting point for unit testing. You want to test a unit of code in your application. Then with this knowledge, you can migrate to testing group of functions doing a particular work or job called integration testing. So this will be our base application for our REST API testing that we'll be writing later. So if you have any question or comment or what you would like me to include, you can drop them in the chat section, and I will see you later. Thank you for watching.